Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the One to Know podcast. I'm Joel Haas.
I'm Lyle Allenstein.
And I'm Lexi Linderman.
Today, we'll be talking all things Penn State SMU. Obviously, the Nittany Lions are set to host their first ever college football playoff game in Beaver Stadium in front of a whiteout atmosphere at noon on Saturday. Guys, we'll just get right into it, kind of looking ahead to this matchup. What are some of the things you're expecting to see?
I think when I look at SMU, I think they're going to go as far as Kevin Jennings is going to take them, their quarterback. This is a guy that James Franklin compared to Lamar Jackson yesterday.
Well, he's also compared Drew Aller to Lamar Jackson, so it's getting a little bit out of hand.
Well, I see. I was
Lamar
going to.
Jackson fan.
That just might be the only NFL quarterback that James knows about, besides like Sean Clifford. I don't know.
Anyway, but this is a really dynamic talent. Really good out of the pocket, really good scrambler. Just like Lamar Jackson. But the thing that goes along with that is that their offensive line is really not good. So if he even wants to stand in the pocket, I really don't think he's going to be able to. I think tonight Ennis Sutton and Abdul Carter are going to have field days in this one, and it's going to cause a lot of pressure on Kevin Jennings because this offense, I know I just said it's going to take him as far as Kevin Jennings plays, but wide receivers, I could confidently say Penn State has a number one with Harrison Wallace. Take that how you will. But they have 7 guys that all are maybe have 20 receptions roughly. They spread that ball out a lot. They don't really have a true threat. Their running back, Brashard Smith, is a wide receiver converted to running back, transferred from Miami. Didn't even know what an A-gap was when I was reading up on him. When he came in, they didn't really think there was going to be a spot for him when he came to SMU. But he's a really talented running back. So I think this SMU offense is interesting in terms of the fact that they don't really have a comparison from what Penn State has seen in Big Ten play. So, I think that's something to keep an eye on. But I really think this offensive line is going to hold them back, and I think that's going to end up being the difference.
I think I'm going to look at the defensive side of SMU. It's really interesting. They're the 4th best run defense in the country, but their passing defense is 91st. So I think it's just interesting because obviously against Oregon, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen were Penn State's dominating. Oregon, that was Penn State's offensive plan, for most of the second half. But I don't know if they're going to stick to that against this SMU defense. I think SMU's run defense has only allowed over 100 yards to one running back once this season against Louisville. He had 117 yards, and other than that, only 4 other running backs had over 50 yards in a game against SMU. Everyone else below 50. And they're not going against a Nick Singleton, guys like that, but I still think it's just interesting. And I also think Rhett Lashley said this week that he doesn't even think they can stop Tyler Warren. He basically just said that. So I think Penn State's offense is gonna go through the air in this one, which I think is gonna be interesting to see because they haven't really done that a lot this season. I feel like they've relied on the run a lot. Illinois, we saw that obviously against Oregon. Like I said, because I honestly just think SMU's run defense is really good. But again, they haven't really faced a running back as good as Nick Singleton or Katron Allen, so maybe, they expose them. I don't know. But I honestly think Penn State's game plan this one is just going to be to let Drew air it out and see how it goes.
Yeah, I think Rhett Lashley has made some really interesting comments heading into this game, and I don't know if he's just not portraying his thoughts well. Maybe he's just not being clear. These quotes are being taken out of context. But like you mentioned, he basically said I don't think we can stop Tyler Warren. That's kind of what he said. And he also said a similar thing about the environment at Beaver Stadium. He was we've never we just haven't experienced anything like this, and I don't think we had a way to prepare for this. There was no way for us to prepare for this.
You could blast Mo Bamba like they did during practice. That's chill.
Oh yeah, they're the clips of them playing Mo Bamba. Apparently Penn State will control the sound system at the stadium, as we've gotten some clarification from the official Beaver Stadium Twitter account on what can or cannot happen. SMU still gets the hype video before the game, and then their band can play at halftime. The band is also in the upper north section of the stadium, which I thought was really interesting, that upper corner where they put the visiting team's fans. And so the band will be way up there. They're also not allowed to play during the game. So they can only play during whatever the 5-10 minute window during halftime. And then outside of that, they can't play at all. So that was kind of interesting. But Lau, I want to go back to what you talked about with Brashard Smith, specifically what he's been able to do, and just kind of the way that the SMU offense is put together. They obviously have a lot of transfers on this team. which I thought is really interesting. Obviously, it's a different strategy from what Penn State's done with very few transfers. SMU, obviously, Rashard Smith was wide receiver at Miami, and then they have a bunch of receivers who come from other schools. They've got a lot of transfers from the Big 12, something I noticed. I think they've got like guys from TCU, Kansas State, and Texas on the roster, and a lot of them are contributors as well. And you know, they're not just like third string guys who are coming in. A lot of these guys are also Texas natives, which, you know, if you want to read into that, these are guys who, you know, born, grew up, played in Texas, now play for SMU, or, you know, traveling across the ACC a little bit. But in terms of the environment they're going to be facing when they come to Happy Valley, it's obviously expected to be whatever 20 degrees or whatever it's going to be. So, I mean, you could read into that and say, you know, potentially the coldest game that a lot of these guys have ever played in. If you want to go that route, I don't know how much. I mean, do you guys, I'll just throw it to you guys. Like, do you think the weather plays a big impact to this one, or do you think it's kind of a non-factor?
I think this is interesting because Rhett Lashley talked about following their ACC championship game preparation in Charlotte against Clemson, how they had like 30-degree days, 40-degree days preparing, which it's not going to be on Saturday, but like it gave them a good feel for playing in cold weather. But then the day he said that quote, I believe it was 70 degrees in Texas when they had their morning practice. So take that how you will. And you can say what you want, but when you're walking into Beaver Stadium and you're able to see your own breath, I think maybe not from a physical standpoint, but definitely a mental standpoint, because we talked to Zane Durant earlier this week. This is a guy, Lake Nona, Florida, and he talked about his first game in Beaver Stadium in the cold, that is, and he was talking about how, like, it was definitely an adjustment. It's certainly a factor. He, you know, talked about having to actually put on Vaseline before the game. And then after the Maryland game, I was talking to Zane Durant, and he was talking about how that was the coldest game that he's ever played, and that was November. Penn State has never played football in December at Beaver Stadium, just like SMU. So I guess there's something like with that. But SMU hasn't really had a comparable road game in terms of weather and conditions that really can compare. So I think if you're going to see it at first, maybe, I don't know if it's from like a physical playing or just a mental standpoint. SMU turns the ball over a lot, and that ball is going to be a rock on Saturday. So I think that's going to be something hard to control. But other than that, I mean, I don't really think it plays a difference from a football perspective. It's just going to be, can they overcome that mental block? And they're not going to admit if they're worried about it or not, but that's something I'm looking at.
I mean, I think it has an impact. I mean, like, for me personally, like, in my 3-minute walk from the library to here, it's only like 35, and I actually felt like I was dying. Like, it was like I was so cold. I had my coat on. I had my coat on. Like, I was freezing, and it's like obviously the players on the field, they're not wearing, like, they're sweating. They're gonna do whatever they can to like be warm. And I know I'm sure the Penn State players have their ways of handling it, but like I just don't think SMU is like Lyle said. I think there's just gonna be some kind of mental block. I don't know. Like weather's just like that's 4 hours that like plus that they're like out there for warm-ups, and they have to actually play in it, and then at the end of the day it's like it's not gonna get any warmer. Like by the time they're on the field for warm-ups, it's like what, like 10:30, and that's like it's gonna be like what, like 20 degrees. I don't know. Like
yeah.
It's like that's crazy. Like that's crazy. Like that's so cold. Like I can't even like fathom.
I think the real difference is going to be if it snows.
Well, okay, it's not gonna snow.
Well, it might though.
Says who?
Scattered, per the weather, per AccuWeather.
Well, I saw it might snow tomorrow.
But like I feel like that's the real difference. But like you also have to remember, like they've got heaters on the bench. They're all gonna have jackets. Like when we walk by the benches,
yeah, but like,
so it's like.
But how much does that really? But that helps you for like two. I don't know.
It's better than zero.
Like, okay.
Just saying.
I mean, I don't know. I think there is something to it. I mean, I was able to like do a little bit more research into it and like specifically in the passing game, because obviously that's what's going to be most impacted by the weather, if anything. I mean, SMU's top 4 wide receivers at this point are all guys from the South, a lot of Texas natives, and 3 of their top 4 receivers are transfers, but their previous spots were Miami, Texas, TCU. So it's like they've stayed in that kind of region for their entire lives. And I mean, I do think it'll potentially be the coldest, weather they've ever experienced. And I think there could potentially be a little bit of a transition period. And then also going back to kind of Kevin Jennings and his play style, his running ability, I think maybe that gets taken away. When you're cold, it's a lot harder to run as smoothly and make, cuts and be kind of as agile. Obviously the muscles can get tight, clenched up, things like that. And obviously it makes it harder to kind of run more fluidly and things like that. So I think if anything, it would play into Penn State's advantage a little bit, just because it kind of takes away SMU's speed element, which is, they like to go tempo. They like to stretch the field, things like that. And obviously they like to have Kevin Jennings as a threat with his legs as well. And I think all of those things get somewhat mitigated because of the weather. That's part of why I think Penn State wins this game comfortably. I don't know how much of a hot take that is at this point, but I think Penn State is just a significantly better team in this matchup. Just kind of looking at what SMU's done this season. Like, obviously they went 11-2 this season. Lost the ACC championship close to Clemson, and then the other loss was to BYU. But you also go through SMU's wins, and I just don't see any impressive opponent. Like, it's an insanely easy schedule. The wins are Nevada, Houston Christian. TCU is probably the best win of the season, but TCU scored 42 points. FSU, which obviously not a great win this year. Louisville, which was ranked at the time but is not ranked anymore. Stanford, Duke by 1 point in overtime.
They had 6 turnovers in that game, by the way.
The Duke game?
Yeah. So if James Franklin wanted to talk to Manny Diaz, that would be something to look at.
That's true. Rhett Lashley, though, has also coached with Manny Diaz previously, so maybe he'll be reaching out for some information, and Manny's gonna be fielding some phone calls from both sides potentially in the lead up to this game. The other 3 wins: Pitt, Boston College, UVA, the other one, Cal. Again, there's just no impressive wins on that resume. I think probably the 2 best teams that SMU played this year, BYU and Clemson, were both losses. So just to me, I don't know why anyone would be picking SMU in this game. I think just from the talent perspective and the resume perspective, you have to look at Penn State. Think that it's the better team in this one. I'm picking, I believe 41-24 was my score prediction. I don't know. What do you guys see this one ending at?
I think I said 31-17. 2-score game. I really think it's going to be a slow start for SMU if they even get started at all. And I think Penn State's just going to take that and run with it. They've best offensive performance against a good team, against Oregon in the Big Ten Championship. I think they're going to build off of that. I think it's a great news for Penn State that Andy Kotelnicki's sticking around for this playoff run, because if he didn't and he took that West Virginia coaching job, I'm not going to say that I thought SMU would beat Penn State, but I think it'd be a lot closer. I honestly think that plays the difference in this game. I think SMU is going to – they're up. I think they play a lot of tempo on offense, which Penn State saw in Oregon, obviously to a much higher caliber team and higher players. But I think they're going to watch the film from that Clemson game when they struggled in that first half, and they're going to see what they did well. And I think it's not really going to be much of a close contest.
I've got Penn State winning 34-20. I also think it's going to be a 2-score game. I just think Penn State stacks up pretty much way better at every position. And I also think the offensive line struggles with SMU. It might just be too much for the Mustangs to overcome. I honestly think, Abdul Carter said this week, that he's fueled by getting snubbed for every award he was up for. I think he wants to make a deep run. I think the entire team wants to prove that this team is actually good, because everyone can say they don't have a good win, whatever, and that's what everyone's gonna think until they beat a good team, they make a run. And so I think they all have that chip on their shoulder, and so I think I don't think this one will be much of a problem for them. I also just think the Beaver Stadium crowd's gonna be good, and I think that's gonna be a big boost.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there, because I've seen some talk about kind of, how the tickets are selling, how many are available. I think there's still some kind of large sections. If you look at, secondhand markets, we'll see. I still think it'll be pretty full on Saturday, not necessarily, record-setting attendance or anything like that, but probably still 100K in Beaver Stadium. It'll be loud. Obviously, I'm not, necessarily worried about kind of the environment that Penn State will have. Obviously, the ticket prices for the game are pretty cheap, and I think it's the hotels that are causing the big issue here, because I think it's $1,500 a night if you want to drive into town. So, but I think that makes things pretty difficult for a lot of fans. Obviously, the proximity to Christmas, things like that. But like I mentioned, I don't think it'll be too big of an issue. I just think the biggest matchup in this game will be Penn State's offensive line against the defensive line. And like you guys kind of touched on, Penn State played really well against Oregon. I thought the offensive line had by far its best game of the season, got a lot of push in that game. And we talked to Nick Dawkins, Tyler Warren earlier in the week, who kind of echoed that sentiment, said they did a really good job of, elevating to the second level and getting back to the linebackers even to create these big holes for Nick and Katron. And obviously that'll be a key in this game, especially if the weather makes things difficult in the passing game. I just think and I talked to Shahan Jayaraja of CBS earlier today actually about this game, just kind of previewing it. He predicted SMU to win this game. Basically said the path to victory would be kind of Kevin Jennings just kind of making some magic happen and taking over and just kind of being the best player on the field. But if he's not able to do that, then it just comes down to can Penn State move the ball kind of similar to how it did against Oregon. And I think you could argue that SMU's defensive line is actually better than Oregon's. I think it would be pretty close. I think Oregon has the advantage at defensive end, but I think SMU has the better defensive tackles. And so if you're Penn State and you're running up the middle, I think we'll find out very quickly in this game. First drive, first 2 drives. If Penn State can run the ball consistently, move the ball on the ground, I think it'll be game over. But if Penn State's getting stuffed, at the line, these 0, 1, 2 yard runs, even tackles for loss, then things can become really difficult, and I think it becomes a very kind of low scoring shootout. But I think Penn State will be able to move the ball pretty well against SMU, like I mentioned. I mean, just on paper, Penn State has a significant talent advantage in this game, and I think that'll show on Saturday.
You talked about the run game, I think, being a difference maker, which I think is a good point because you saw the success that Kaytron and Nick had against Oregon. The offensive line played really well, so I think that's going to be a good test with this for them with this SMU defensive front. But this is another hypothetical that I'm going to throw out there. But Penn State does not have a great backup quarterback situation going into this game. Forbid anything happens to Drew. They're in a really tough spot because Beau entered the transfer portal. There's that whole kind of national saga, if you will, right now with him. And I think, obviously, when he posted on X, he called it an impossible decision. Made it with a heavy heart because it's tough because obviously he wanted to be with the team throughout the playoffs. This is a guy who didn't really have a shot to start, especially when Drew announced that he was coming back for another year. So I get the decision to enter the portal. Quarterback spots, they go so fast. And he had got to go take visits. He's got reportedly scheduled visits with, I think, Mizzou, UCF, Indiana, Iowa, teams that are all interested in him. So, and it's tough because this is a guy that he's been a part of the game plan, whether you see him get the ball a lot or not. With those 2 quarterback option looks, he filled in for Drew when they won that Wisconsin game. And he's just Beau Pribula, Andy Kolnick, talked about at the beginning of before the season even started, that he's one of the best playmakers on offense. But now they've got Ethan Grunkemeyer, who is the backup quarterback, true freshman 4-star, who has not seen a snap yet this year. He had opportunities to go in a game against Kent State, Purdue, Maryland, but James talked about getting Beau those reps, and now it's, he's probably, obviously hindsight is what it is, but you probably want to look like you get Grunkemeyer some reps in those situations. He talked about on Monday how Jackson Smolik's been cleared for about a week, but he corrected himself yesterday at practice, saying that it was just a practice. So there are other quarterback options. It's not great. You've got walk-on Jack Lambert, who also hasn't taken a snap. He's also a walk-on. So that's obviously a lot of pressure. And then there's, you've got Tyler Warren, committed to Virginia Tech, to play quarterback back in the day. Luke Reynolds played quarterback in high school. Omari Evans played quarterback in high school. Dom DeLuca and Tony Rojas. Obviously, I'm stretching the possibilities here. But it's when you look at the other side of it, SMU backup quarterback Preston Stone, who lost the job to Kevin Jennings in week 2. He's also entered the transfer portal, but he is obviously a different caliber quarterback, I think, compared to Beau. But he's sticking it out with the Mustangs through the playoff run. If something happens to Kevin Jennings, that's taken care of. They know how to game plan for that. So I just think if something happens to Drew, they're one bad snap away from kind of being in a terrible position. And Grunkemeyer, obviously, he's been talked about a lot. Obviously, a lot of praise. Obviously, we're not going to hear anything poorly. But they didn't take a quarterback in the 2023 cycle. So this is a guy that they're kind of banking on to hit for the future, obviously. But now he could be put in a situation where it's a lot of pressure. And this kind of reminds me of when Taquan Roberson was put in that Iowa game, and obviously he was talked highly, but he not good. And Taquan Roberson has been on 4 different teams. I think he's in the portal again right now. So I think that's just something that's a storyline to keep an eye on.
But I was saying the interesting thing is I don't think they wanted to rush Grunk into any situation by any means, and I think that's probably why he didn't get any snaps this season. But they obviously didn't anticipate. I don't know if they probably didn't anticipate Drew coming back. I don't think they anticipated Beau leaving. I mean, maybe they thought. What?
I never mind.
I thought maybe because I think Drew. It could have gone very much either way. I think he has potential to be a second, third round pick in this draft, maybe late first, because this quarterback draft is just not good. But he also he could stay another year and obviously be an early first round pick, and he picked to stay another year. But and then like Kyle said, I think Beau just got put in a horrible situation. It's just hard, especially because he took snaps pretty much every game. Like this is not a guy like it's not just like, oh no, like now there's no one behind Drew. It's like, oh no, like we lost part of our game plan. And so it's like I also think with Gronk, if something happens to Drew, like it's like how can he handle like being thrown in a situation? Like this is not we're finding out like midway through this season that Beau's gone. It's like this is like a do or die type of thing. And it's like I don't like Gronk hasn't seen any game action. You're gonna throw him in for the first time in a playoff game where if like Penn State loses, like the season's over. Like that's just a lot to put on him. But I mean they have no choice. And then it's also concerning that there's no third option. Like I just don't like. I don't know. That's just like I feel like you always want to have a plan A, B, and C, and there's just no plan C. So it's.
I mean, yeah. Franklin literally said yesterday when he was asked like about the third quarterback situation, he said they currently don't even have a third option.
Yeah.
Like that's concerning, and like he said, Gunkemeyer saying I think 350 reps throughout practice this season, or like in like a game environment with like leading the first, second team offense, whatever. But like at practice yesterday, they're clearly not really banking on Drew getting hurt because like. When we see the reps, obviously it's Drew, then Beau, or then they throw side by side. It was all Drew, and then I think Grunk got one throw at the end of every session with the wide receivers and tight ends, and then they switch it up, go right back to Drew. So it's like they're not even like I feel like trying to get him involved, you know?
Well, and the other thing that's concerning is like Drew went out for that Wisconsin game, and it's like he also was like a little shaken up. I forget what game it was. At another point this season, he had to come out for a couple of snaps. It's like he hasn't been the picture of health this season. Like obviously he's been fine. He started every game, but it's like this is a sport like you really just don't know what happens. Like Kevin Winston Jr. like partially tore his ACL against like Bowling Green. Like that's like anything could happen, and so it's just like I like it's just like concerning that they're just like they're really just like banking on like Drew being healthy, and it's like this is not the time where you can just like I mean like obviously you're gonna have Drew out there no matter like Grunk's not gonna see the field unless Drew gets hurt, but it's just like I don't know, it's just weird, like I don't know.
I mean, if Drew does get hurt, which obviously
Their season's over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, obviously depending on where the situation of the game is.
I mean, if it's late fourth quarter, but like
yeah.
This could blow up like tremendously right in James Franklin's face just because of the way that he's handled the whole situation. I think Beau not playing in the playoffs is a direct result of a Franklin policy where if you enter the portal, you can't play for Penn State after that. And other schools, obviously like SMU is an example where Preston Stone enters the portal but said he'll finish out the playoff run with the Mustangs and he'll be available if needed. I think this is a situation where Beau probably would have been willing to play, but due to a Franklin policy that he's had since he got here, he doesn't want anyone to play if they've already entered the portal, which you can kind of see where he's coming from with that. But again, if Drew goes down, that looks like a horrible decision. And then on top of that, you have the thing with Grunkemeyer where he hasn't played at all this season, and he's had opportunities to play, whether it was Kent State or even Washington or Maryland, a few of these blowout games where obviously you've had opportunities to go to your QB3 and chose not to. So obviously now Grunkemeyer is not as prepared as he could have potentially been. And then, you go farther behind that, and he says they don't even have a third quarterback. So a lot of this, I think, falls back on Franklin.
I think I agree with you in terms of, like, the policy thing. But Franklin, he made a comment about saying, like, there are ways they try to be flexible with it. And I think, for how I interpreted it, he said it without saying it, but, like, I think they were going to make an exception for Beau. Because, like, I think it's one thing if you're, like, in the third string, fourth string, whatever, linebacker or wide receiver, you're not really seeing the field, even in the second string, depending on the position group. But this is a guy that's in the game plan. Like, he's proven he's important. He's the backup quarterback. So, and he said on Sunday, like, Pribula, he went to practice and he announced his intent to enter the portal, I believe, Sunday night. And, like, they talked the whole week prior saying that he was going to stick around. He planned on staying. And I think Franklin's quote at the end was like, Beau did not want to leave the team. He did not want to leave it in the middle of the season or something like that. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing. So I think there was an exception made. But there's nothing you can do about it because he kept him around for that long. Or not, obviously, both stuck around for that long. But he realized the significance of the situation, and you got to go take visits. I think Beau is a starting quarterback in college football, Power 4 level. So he's got to go do what he's got to do.
Yeah, I agree. I just think it's just really tough. I also think Franklin indirectly said that they would have made an exception. Like I think it's like And I just think it, like Lyle says, a different situation. Like Beau has been in every game this season. Like he's part of their game plan. But I honestly think they're all like I think now they're just all just gonna try to move forward. And it's like because like Andy Kotelnicki got asked about it, obviously because he's praised Beau as like part of his game plan. Like he thinks like Lyle said that he's one of the best playmakers on offense, and he basically was like, well, like now just that package is gonna be replaced with something else. Like we'll just have to find something else to like fill that role. And it's like, well. Okay, so I don't know if they'll have that for this game, but I think moving forward, I mean, I think they have some kind of plan, but it's just like,
Well, moving forward could be the season, though.
Well, I know, but like I don't know, like it's just like.
You're moving to the off season.
Yeah, so don't be ready for the situation. They don't have a backup quarterback this time. I mean, he did say they will put 10 offensive linemen on the field if that's what it means to score. They can't do that though. I don't recommend it.
Put 10 Tyler Warrens on the field.
That's how you win. He didn't do enough.
I mean, I don't think Penn State has another Beau Pribula. Like, I don't think Grunt can run like that.
No.
And obviously Smollett can't even play. And, we haven't really seen much from, walk-ons. But, I mean, Tyler Warren potentially is maybe your best threat if you want to have kind of a mobile guy who can also pass the ball. But I don't know.
Franklin was asked about, is Tyler Warren an emergency quarterback option? And Franklin,
well, he almost said yes, in a way.
He was like, so something along the lines of like, I'm not revealing the game plan, or like, I understand the question.
Oh, so he is in the game plan.
He was like, I'm happy to talk about that in the off season. I was like, okay, so like.
Yeah, I'm sure we're gonna be asking in like next June, what went into the decision to put Tyler Warren at QB3. That's it for this week's episode. Hopefully we got you guys prepared to watch Penn State take on SMU in Beaver Stadium, whether that's in person or on the TV. I believe on TNT on Saturday at noon. But if you want more football content, you can find us at psucollegian.com and follow us on socials. We'll see you guys after the game.